The air in the Manchester Arena on the evening of May 22, 2017, was electric. Thousands of fans, many of them children and teenagers accompanied by their parents, had gathered for a night they had been looking forward to for months. They were there to see a global pop superstar, Ariana Grande, on her Dangerous Woman tour. The arena was a sea of flashing lights, pink merchandise, and excited faces, singing along to every word. It was a space filled with pure joy, a celebration of music and youthful energy. For those inside, the world outside with all its worries seemed to disappear, replaced by the thumping bass and the collective voice of a happy crowd. It was supposed to be a night of unforgettable memories, and for the worst possible reasons, it would be. As the final song ended and the house lights came up around 10:30, the atmosphere shifted from concert euphoria to the familiar buzz of a crowd heading home. Parents were texting their children to meet them at designated spots. Groups of friends were laughing and reliving their favorite moments, and merchandise stands were doing their final busy trade. The main exodus route for many was through the City Room, a large public foyer that connected the arena to Victoria Station. It was a bottleneck, a transitional space where thousands of people converged, their guards down after an evening of fun. In that moment, they were just fans, families and friends, completely unaware that they were walking towards a moment that would change their lives and the city of Manchester forever. The attacker, Salman Abedi, had been waiting. He had blended into the post-concert crowd, a large backpack concealing a devastating weapon. He chose his moment with chilling precision, targeting the most vulnerable as they were leaving. The explosion that tore through the City Room was sudden and catastrophic. It ripped through the joy and replaced it with a sound that no one there would ever forget. The blast sent a deadly wave of shrapnel, nuts, bolts, and screws packed into the bomb across the confined space. In an instant, a place of celebration was transformed into a scene of absolute horror and devastation. The music had stopped, and a deafening silence, followed by screams, took its place. That single act of terror claimed the lives of 22 innocent people, the youngest just 8 years old. It left more than 1,000 others with injuries, both physical and psychological, that would last a lifetime. The attack was not just on the people in that room, it was an attack on a way of life. It targeted children and families at their happiest, seeking to sow fear and division in the heart of a vibrant city. It was a brutal end to a night that had begun with so much promise. The echoes of that explosion would reverberate far beyond the walls of the arena, sparking a story of immense pain, but also one of incredible strength, resilience, and a demand for meaningful change. The Manchester Arena bombing was not a spontaneous act of violence. It was a meticulously planned terrorist attack, the result of a plot developed by two brothers, Salman and Hashem Abedi. Raised in Manchester but with roots in Libya, the brothers had become radicalized, embracing an extremist ideology that twisted faith into a justification for mass murder. Their journey took them between the United Kingdom and Libya, where it's believed they received guidance and possibly training in the methods of terror. They were not lone wolves acting on a sudden impulse. Instead, they were part of a wider network of hate, and they methodically worked together to acquire the knowledge and materials needed to build their weapon. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a cold, calculated conspiracy. Hashem Abedi played a crucial role in the preparation, even though he wasn't in the United Kingdom on the day of the attack. He was the facilitator, the enabler. He helped his older brother source the dangerous chemicals required to create the high-explosive TATP, often referred to as Mother of Satan. He assisted in gathering the components, including the nuts and bolts that would turn the bomb into a shrapnel device designed to cause maximum carnage. The brothers used various addresses and accounts to stockpile their materials, operating with a level of secrecy that allowed them to go undetected. Hashem's involvement was fundamental. He was a willing and active partner in the plan to kill and maim innocent people. While Hashem handled much of the logistics, Salman was the one who would carry out the final, terrible act. In the weeks leading up to the attack, he conducted what security services call hostile reconnaissance. He visited the Manchester Arena, studying its layout, observing the flow of people, and identifying the perfect spot to detonate his device. He chose the City Room foyer precisely because it was a crowded, enclosed space where people would be funneled after the concert. His movements were deliberate. On the night of the attack, he loitered in the area for over an hour, a chilling presence with a deadly secret hidden in his backpack, waiting for the concert to end and for his victims to walk into his trap. The bomb itself was a homemade, improvised explosive device, but it was devastatingly effective. Packed into a metal container and surrounded by shrapnel, it was designed not just to explode, but to spray lethal projectiles in every direction. The Abedi brothers had learned how to construct it, and they had tested their methods. Their actions demonstrate a deep commitment to their violent cause and a complete disregard for human life. The plot was a joint enterprise, forged in radical ideology and executed with a chilling determination. One brother built the foundations of the attack, while the other lit the fuse, leaving a trail of destruction that would be felt for generations. The moment the bomb detonated at 10:31, the City Room was plunged into chaos. The bright, bustling foyer became a dark, smoke-filled war zone in a split second. The blast was deafening, and a pressure wave threw people to the ground. Those who were not killed or gravely injured in the initial explosion found themselves in a scene of unimaginable horror. Survivors described a thick, acrid smoke that made it impossible to see or breathe, punctuated by the continuous piercing sound of fire alarms. The immediate aftermath was a period of profound confusion and terror, as people struggled to understand what had just happened. For many, the first instinct was that a speaker had blown up or a technical fault had occurred. This initial confusion quickly gave way to the horrifying realization that this was an attack. The sight of the injured, the smell of smoke and explosives, and the screams of those in pain and fear confirmed the worst. Panic set in. People scrambled to escape, tripping over debris and the bodies of the fallen. Parents who had been separated from their children screamed their names into the smoky abyss. In the midst of this terror, incredible acts of bravery emerged. Uninjured concert-goers rushed back into the danger zone to help the wounded, using merchandise t-shirts as makeshift bandages and trying to comfort those who were dying. Their first aid was instinctive, their compassion immediate, even as they faced a danger they could not yet comprehend. The emergency response was mobilized within minutes, but the scene that greeted the first responders was overwhelming. Paramedics, police, and fire crews were confronted with a mass casualty event on a scale rarely seen in the United Kingdom. They described it as a battlefield. The sheer number of casualties with catastrophic, life-altering injuries stretched resources to their limits. Communication was difficult, and initial reports were confused with fears of a second attacker or more devices still active. Police officers formed cordons to secure the area, while paramedics triaged the wounded, making heartbreaking decisions about who could be saved and who was beyond help. The professionalism of these responders under such immense pressure was extraordinary. Outside the arena, a different kind of chaos was unfolding. News of an incident spread rapidly through social media and frantic phone calls. Desperate parents and friends rushed towards the area, held back by police lines, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. The public's reaction was one of shock and solidarity. Mancunians opened their homes to stranded concert-goers. Taxi drivers offered free rides, and hotels provided shelter. This wave of kindness, which became known as the Spirit of Manchester, stood in stark contrast to the hatred that had caused the tragedy. While the bomber had sought to create division, the immediate response from the city's people was to come together in an incredible display of unity and compassion. In the wake of the bombing, the pursuit of justice became a national priority. While Salman Abedi had died in the attack, his brother and co-conspirator, Hashem, was still at large. He had conveniently fled to his family's native Libya just a month before the bombing, thinking he had escaped the consequences of his actions. The British authorities immediately identified him as a key suspect, and a complex and politically sensitive process began to bring him back to the United Kingdom to face trial. Extradition is never a simple matter, especially from a country experiencing its own political instability. It required months of intensive diplomatic negotiations between the United Kingdom and Libyan governments. The breakthrough came in July 2019, when Hachem Abedi was successfully extradited and flown back to London. His arrival in the United Kingdom marked a significant moment for the victims' families. It meant that someone would be held accountable in a British court for the murder of their loved ones. His trial, which began at the Old Bailey in London, was a long and harrowing process. The prosecution laid out a mountain of evidence that meticulously detailed his involvement. They showed how he had helped research, purchase, and stockpile the chemicals for the TATP explosive. His fingerprints were found in locations where the bomb components were stored, tying him directly to the plot. Throughout the trial, Hachem Abedi refused to accept any responsibility. He denied all the charges, attempting to distance himself from his brother's actions and claiming he had no knowledge of the murderous plan. He didn't even attend the final days of his trial or his sentencing, a final act of contempt towards the families who had sat through weeks of painful evidence. But the jury saw through his lies. In March 2020, he was found guilty of 22 counts of murder, one for each life lost, as well as attempted murder and conspiracy to cause an explosion. The verdict was a moment of profound, if somber, relief for the families who had waited so long for this day. The sentence handed down was one of the most severe in modern British legal history. The judge ordered Hachem Abedi to serve a minimum of 55 years in prison, ensuring that he would likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. The judge told him he was equally culpable with his brother for the wicked and monstrous attack. While no prison sentence could ever bring back the 22 people who were so cruelly taken, the conviction provided a measure of legal justice. It sent a clear message that those who participate in acts of terror, even from afar, will be hunted down and held to account for their devastating crimes against humanity. The conviction of Hachem Abedi brought legal accountability, but, it did not answer all the questions. A major public inquiry was launched to investigate the full circumstances of the attack, and its findings revealed a series of devastating failures. The inquiry uncovered that the security services, particularly MI5, had missed several significant opportunities to identify the threat posed by Salman Abedi. He was not a complete unknown. In the months leading up to the attack, MI5 received 2 separate pieces of intelligence about him that were significant enough to be assessed as relating to possible terrorist activity. Shockingly, this information was not acted upon quickly enough, and the opportunity to place him under closer surveillance was lost. The inquiry's chairman, Sir John Saunders, concluded that had this intelligence been handled differently, the attack might have been prevented. This was a crushing blow for the families of the victims, who learned that their loved ones might still be alive if the system had worked as it should. It was revealed that Salman Abedi had been a subject of interest for MI5 in the past, but that his case had been closed, meaning he was no longer under active investigation. The failure to reopen his file and follow up on the new intelligence was described as a serious mistake. The inquiry exposed weaknesses in how MI5 processed and prioritized information, highlighting that even a powerful security agency can make critical errors. The failures were not limited to the intelligence services. The security at the Manchester Arena itself came under heavy criticism. On the night of the attack, Salman Abedi, carrying a large and heavy backpack that should have raised immediate suspicion, was able to loiter in the city room for over an hour without being challenged. The inquiry heard that members of the public had in fact noticed him and reported their concerns to a security guard, but no effective action was taken. This was described as a disgraceful failure. The security operation on the ground was found to be inadequate, with staff who were poorly trained and unclear about how to respond to a potential threat. The inquiry also pointed to a blind spot in the arena's security perimeter. The city room, being a public thoroughfare, was not considered part of the arena's secured zone. meaning it was not patrolled or monitored to the same standard as the area inside the ticket barriers. The attacker exploited this vulnerability perfectly. The findings of the public inquiry were a painful but necessary reckoning. They showed that the tragedy was not just the result of one man's hatred, but also of systemic weaknesses and missed chances. It created a powerful and undeniable case for change, proving that existing security protocols were simply not good enough to protect the public from a determined terrorist. Out of the immense grief and anger that followed the public inquiry's findings, a powerful movement for change was born. It was led by Figen Murray, the mother of Martin Hett, a 29-year-old PR manager who was one of the 22 people killed in the attack. Figen was determined that her son's death and the deaths of all the victims should not be in vain. She could not accept that the security failures that contributed to the bombing could be allowed to happen again. With incredible strength and dignity, she channeled her personal tragedy into a public campaign for new legislation that would legally require venues to be better prepared for terrorist attacks. This campaign would become known as Martin's Law. The core idea behind Martin's Law is simple but profound. The safety and security of the public in crowded places should not be an optional extra or a matter of good practice. It should be a legal requirement. Figen Murray argued that just as venues have a legal duty to protect people from fires, they should also have a duty to protect them from terrorism. She tirelessly lobbied politicians, met with security experts, and spoke to the media, making a compelling case for a fundamental shift in how the UK thinks about public safety. Her campaign gained huge public support, and the government listened. Martin's Law, officially known as the Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, was drafted. The proposed law creates a tiered system to ensure that the security measures required are proportionate to the size and nature of the venue. The first tier, known as the Standard Tier, applies to venues with a capacity of 100 to 799 people. These smaller venues, such as local theaters, community halls, and larger pubs, will be required to undertake basic, low-cost activities to improve their preparedness. This includes providing staff with free terrorism awareness and response training and having a simple security plan in place. The aim is to create a baseline level of security across the country without placing an unmanageable burden on smaller businesses. The second tier, the Enhanced Tier, is for larger venues with a capacity of 800 or more people, like sports stadiums, concert arenas, and major shopping centers. These venues, which present a more attractive target for terrorists, will have much stricter legal obligations. They will be required to conduct formal risk assessments to identify the specific threats they face and develop a detailed written security plan to mitigate them. This plan must be submitted to a new regulator for approval. Furthermore, they will have to ensure their staff undergo regular and more comprehensive training, including drills and exercises to test their emergency procedures. Martin's Law is designed to make thinking about terror preparedness a part of everyday business for all public venues. The introduction of Martin's Law is set to formalize a shift in UK venue security that has already been taking place since the Manchester attack. The bombing was a brutal wake-up call for the entire events and entertainment industry. In the years following the tragedy, many venues voluntarily adopted much stricter security protocols, anticipating the direction of the new legislation. One of the most visible changes for the public has been the implementation of strict bag policies. Large bags and backpacks are now banned from most major arenas and stadiums, with people instead required to use small, often transparent bags. This simple measure makes it much harder for a potential attacker to conceal a weapon or explosive device. Beyond bag checks, there has been a huge emphasis on upskilling staff. Counter-terrorism training programs, such as the police-led ACT, Action Counters Terrorism Scheme, have been rolled out widely across the country. This training teaches staff how to spot suspicious behavior, what to do if they identify a potential threat, and how to react in the immediate aftermath of an attack. The goal is to create a network of thousands of extra eyes and ears on the ground, turning every staff member, from ticket scanners to bar staff, into a part of the security apparatus. Martin's Law will make this kind of training a legal necessity, ensuring a consistent standard of vigilance across all venues. The way venues are designed and managed is also changing. New buildings are now being constructed with counter-terrorism in mind from the very beginning. This includes features like hostile vehicle mitigation, installing barriers and bollards to prevent vehicle attacks, and designing layouts that avoid creating dangerous bottlenecks like the city room. For existing venues, there is a renewed focus on emergency planning. Evacuation drills are no longer just about fire. They now simulate mass casualty incidents, helping staff and local emergency services to coordinate their response and save lives more effectively. The relationship between venues and the police has also become much closer, with better intelligence sharing to help venues prepare for specific threats. Martin's Law acts as the final piece of this puzzle, turning these best practices into a legal framework with real consequences for non-compliance. It creates a regulator with the power to inspect venues and issue fines if they are not meeting their security duties. This represents a fundamental change in mindset. Security is no longer just about protecting the venue's property. It's about protecting the lives of the people inside it. The legacy of the Manchester attack is a new era of security in the UK, one where preparedness is not an option, but an obligation. It's a difficult but necessary evolution, driven by the need to ensure that a tragedy like Manchester never happens again. The impact of Martin's Law is not confined to the borders of the United Kingdom. It is being watched closely by governments and security agencies around the world, who see it as a potential blueprint for protecting their own public spaces. In the global fight against terrorism, attacks on so-called soft targets, places like concert halls, shopping centers, and transport hubs with limited security, have become increasingly common. While many countries have responded to attacks with enhanced security measures, the UK's approach is seen as pioneering. It is one of the first countries in the world to move from simply recommending security improvements to making them a comprehensive legal requirement for the private sector. Countries like the United States, France, Belgium, and Australia have all experienced their own devastating attacks on soft targets and have subsequently increased security at public venues. This often includes a more visible police presence, the use of metal detectors, and the adoption of clear bag policies at major sporting events and concerts. However, these measures are often implemented by individual venues or on a state-by-state basis, rather than being mandated by a single, overarching national law. This can lead to an inconsistent patchwork of security standards, where some places are well protected while others remain vulnerable. Martin's Law offers a model for creating a consistent, legally enforceable standard for everyone. The UK's legislation is being viewed as a new gold standard because it places the responsibility for security directly onto the owners and operators of the venues themselves. It forces them to proactively assess their own risks and take concrete steps to mitigate them. This is a significant shift from a model that relies solely on the state and its police forces to provide security. By compelling private businesses to become active partners in counter-terrorism, Martin's Law creates a much more robust and multi-layered defense system. International security experts are studying its tiered approach, which ensures that the law is both effective for high-risk locations and manageable for smaller businesses. The global influence of this approach is likely to grow as other nations grapple with the same threats. The principles behind Martin's Law, proportionate measures, staff training, and clear accountability, are universal. Figen Murray's campaign has not just changed the law in the UK, it has started a global conversation about the duty of care that venues owe to their visitors. While the path to adopting similar legislation elsewhere will be complex, the Manchester attack and the powerful response it inspired have provided a clear and compelling example. The legacy of Martin Hett and the 21 other victims may well be safer public spaces not just in Britain, but across the world. The Manchester Arena bombing left a deep and permanent scar on the city and its people. The loss of 22 lives, the physical and psychological injuries of hundreds more, and the trauma inflicted on an entire community can never be undone. But in the face of such profound darkness, the city of Manchester responded with a spirit of unity and resilience that captured the heart of the world. In the days and weeks that followed the attack, the city refused to be defined by hatred. Instead, it came together in a remarkable display of solidarity, compassion, and defiance. This spirit was perfectly encapsulated by the One Love Manchester benefit concert, organized by Ariana Grande just 2 weeks after the attack. The concert was a powerful and emotional statement. It brought together some of the biggest names in music, but the real stars were the 55,000 people who attended, many of whom had been at the original concert. They came to reclaim the joy of live music, to honor the victims, and to show the world that they would not be broken by fear. The concert raised millions of pounds for the victims' families, but its true value was symbolic. It was an act of collective healing, a message of love and hope broadcast to the world. It showed that the response to violence would not be more division, but more unity. Alongside the music, a small, humble insect became the enduring symbol of Manchester's strength, the worker bee. For over 150 years, the bee has been a part of Manchester's coat of arms, representing the city's industrial past and the hard-working nature of its people. After the attack, it took on a powerful new meaning. The bee came to symbolize the city's collective spirit, its refusal to be defeated, and its hive-like ability to work together in a crisis. People across the city and beyond got bee tattoos as a permanent tribute to the victims and a badge of solidarity. The image of the Manchester bee appeared on murals, posters, and banners, a quiet but powerful statement that the city stands together. Today, 8 years on from that terrible night, the legacy of the Manchester Arena bombing is complex. It is a story of devastating loss and unforgivable failure. But it is also a story of incredible bravery, profound love, and positive change. The legal consequences for the perpetrators and the creation of Martin's Law have provided accountability and a framework for a safer future. The attack changed the city forever, but it did not break its spirit. The memory of the 22 lives lost is honored not just in memorials, but in the enduring resilience of the people and the positive action that has emerged from the tragedy. The Manchester bee is more than just a symbol. It is a promise that even after the darkest of times, the spirit of community will endure and the bee still flies.